Hello and welcome to an episode of Program Breakdown. Now, this is an old series that I haven't done in a while, so it's something I've been willing to resurrect. So we're going to be doing a bunch more of these as time goes on. So today we're going to be covering the Juggernaut method 1.0. Now, this is an old program now. This is probably not representative of what the guys at Juggernaut, Chad Wesley Smith being the head man there, what their methodology looks like now, but it's still a pretty popular, um, popular template that gets used online, and for good reason because it's pretty solid template. So we're just gonna break it down into the different levels. So we have the top down, so that's the macro cycle, so that's the whole block. Then we have the mesocycles, which are the individual 4-week blocks that make up the macro cycle. We'll have a look at the microcycle, which is the training week. We'll delve into the progression behind it, and then we'll just a little bit of commentary on what it looks like as a general kind of program. So I'll save you the intro into the Chad Wesley Smith and Juggernaut. If you're not familiar with who they are, just go check out Juggernaut Training Systems, JTS. They have loads of stuff online, so you can familiarize yourselves with them in your own time if you want to. So just a really quick snapshot of the program. It uses block periodization. So we have 4 mesocycles that make up the macrocycle. So the macrocycle is a 16-week program. So we have 4 blocks of 4 weeks. Those are the mesocycles. Each microcycle has a general stated goal. So week 1 is an accumulation phase. Week 2 is an intensification phase. Week 3 is realization. And then week 4 is the deload. You'll be lifting with a frequency of 1 time per week. The 4 focus lifts of the program are squat, bench, deadlift, overhead, press. So you'll be pretty familiar with that kind of split. It's basically the exact same as 5-3-1. Hopefully this isn't bouncing around too much on the microphone. So we'll start looking at the macrocycle. So it's split into 4 blocks. The blocks are kind of focused around the rep range you'll be doing. So it follows a linear progression. So you'll be doing a block of 10s, a block of 8s, a block of 5s, and a block of 3s. And you'll be generally speaking increasing the intensity 5% week on week. And you'll see that in a more granular form when we go to look on the actual top-down view of it. So we have kind of 2 things going on. We have a general volume effect. So typically there's 5 working sets week 1, 4 working sets week 3, and then there's 1 working set on week 3, which is just an all-out AMRAP. So there's some modifications made based off RPEs. So week 1, we're generally looking at an RPE effort of 7. So 3 reps in reserve, basically the same shit. Week 2 is an RPE of 8, and then week 3 is an RPE of 10. So an all-out maximum effort. So we're using 3 weeks up, 1 week down protocol. So 3 weeks of loading, 1 week of deload. This is how it's based out. So a lot of the information is taken from an article. That's another article. It's a breakdown on physiques.com. So it's a really good article if you want to take that. If you want to take a look at that, be worth your time. So 4 week waves, weekly phases are broken into accumulation, intensification, and realization. So basically we talk around what these actually mean. So an accumulation is basically an accumulation of volume, an accumulation of fatigue. The intensification acts as a bridge between the accumulation of volume. So the main vehicle of adaptation, the main overload we are doing in week 1 is volume of effort, not intensity of effort. Week 2, we are taking a bridge between that. So there'll be a drop in the intensity utilized. There'll be an increase in the intensity utilized. There'll be a drop in the volume that you're performing. So we're taking off a working set. We're increasing the intensity by about 5% on average. we're up in the RPE of the AMRAP set. And then on the last week there, it's basically one working set, one all-out set, and acute overload. And that's your heaviest week. So that's basically, you putting in the groundwork week 1 and 2, so you can have a good result on week 3, and hopefully set a pretty decent PB on that week. And then you have a kind of a set deload, which we'll kind of discuss a bit more as we go in to break that down. The microcycle, so you have 4 days, and the days are focused around the lifts you're going to be performing. So you have a squat day, a bench day, a deadlift day, and an overhead press day. So basically just an exact copy of 5-3-1. And then the splits that are recommended, you can do basically day on, day off kind of splits, or you can do the typical upper lower split, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So that's a pretty common way of performing an upper lower split. And this follows an upper lower split. To be honest, I don't know what they advise in terms of assistance work. I don't know if that's left to you. We're only really going to be talking about the program itself, so that you could address some of the criticisms that I have for this program by adapting the assistance work, which is something we'll talk about at the end. The program itself, so you basically see it laid out there. We have the blocks across the right of the screen, so 10s, 8s, 5s, and 3s. And you can see the 3 weeks. So basically, if we take the 10s block, we'll not talk through it all, but the 10s block, we're doing 5x10 or 60% with a rep out on the 5th set. Week 2, we're doing 3x10 at 67.5% with a rep out at 67.5% on set 3. So we basically have some inferred warm-ups here, which you could argue the worth of. The realization, we basically have one working set, which is a rep out of 75%. And then the deload, I think, is basically a carbon copy of the 5-3-1 deload. 40% times 5, 50% times 5, 60% times 5. The kind of the real bugbear for me, like these percentages on their own, if left unaltered, would be perfectly fine. 60% roughly a 15 rep max effort. So if we're going to like an RPE of 8 or 3 to 8, then you're going to be getting 13 reps on that top set, potentially more depending, because some people are better at reps. And on that realization, the max effort set, that's 75%. Once you've done 2 weeks of 10s, your fitness at 10 reps is going to be increased. We're going to see you're going to see improvement between week 1 and 3. So week 1, 2, and 3, when you're performing 5 sets, 3 sets, and then we're only going to do 1 set, we're going to do more. So 75% is your 10 rep max, or should be your 10 rep max, or around your 10 rep max, based off kind of like Brzezicki or something like that. So we are going to see. So after doing like 2 weeks of work, when we go into that max out, we're going to be getting more than 10 reps anyway. So we should be seeing progress on this block. If we carry that out where we're doing 80%, 85, 90%, you can see kind of that week 3, the realization. You can see kind of the linear nature of the program, where our realization AMRAP is 75% week 1, or block 1, block 2, 80%, block 3, 85%, and block 4, 90%. And you can see these are around the RM values. 75% is about your 10 rep max. 80% is around your 8 rep max. 85% is around your 5 rep max. There's a bit of leeway there depending on what the equation you use. And 90% is pretty commonly your 3 rep max. So you can see the idea is we're building up towards your rep max, and hopefully going to be doing more reps at your rep max than your starting max. So the main kind of bugbear in this program for me is this whole 90% rule. So this also comes from Jim Wendler's 5-3-1, where you take your working max or your actual max, however you decide to derive it, and then for some reason you times it by 90%. So you can see a working example here, where if you have a 1 rep max of 180 kilos and we take 70% of that max, is 126 kg. So the same logic applied. So if we have a working max of 62 kg, and then we take 70% RM, the actual RM, So your actual percentage you're working at is 62.7%. So one of the kind of the good things of using percentages, and one of the reasons why we use percentages, or one of the reasons why you would want to use percentages, is because it's going to guarantee the load. So if I say to you, give me 3x10 or 75%, and I use your actual working max, I can say with pretty much certainty that's going to provide an overload stimulus if you complete that workout. If you complete that workout, then I can say with more or less certainty we're going to have a good block, or at least the chances of us having a good block is going to be pretty good. If we're starting the program at that kind of intensity, and we make those 3x10, so that's an overload. That's an overload that's applied. So your fitness will be increased if we come back in a week's time. And obviously, there's variation and preparedness on day to day, week to week, and that's where we can utilize RPEs to maybe be a little bit smarter around that. But if we just go off percentages and basically the whole attraction, or the whole benefit to a percentage-based system is if you complete the work, you will get the result, with a pretty high confidence variable. So if I start saying 90%, 62.5% for 10 reps is not going to provide a hell of a lot of overload. It might be a good way to start the block, like 60%, 5x10 or 60% for a 10s block is not a shit start. It's quite a good start. So we're doing 5x10. We're going to get a lot of the adaptation we're going to get in week one of a new protocol is going to be quick adaptation. So peripheral fitness, increase like glycogen stores, maybe hypertrophy is probably get a little bit of hypertrophy, but it's mainly going to be peripheral fitness that we're going to gain, and maybe a little bit of skill gain. But we're basically going to get better at doing 10 reps. So 60% 5x10 is not a bad start. 3x10 or 67.5% is okay. I mean, it's not bad. Whereas the bridge between where we're going, and then a rep out of 75% is fine. We like, that's not a badly designed three sessions. Like, we're going to get 75% max rep out. If we get more than 10 reps, we're going to get strength gain. Then it's going to be inferred strength gain because we're further away from 1 rep max. We're not 90% and above. We're under 80%. So a lot of the gain we're going to get still going to be around strength endurance, hypertrophy, that kind of jazz. But we're still getting progress. You know, if I'm doing more than 10 reps, 75% max, then I'm pretty sure I'm making progress. And then we're carrying that thread through on the 4 blocks that we're doing. So it's not bad. And we kind of have those percentages kind of locked in. So I know by the end of wave 4 or block 4, if I'm getting like 6-7 reps at 90% of my max I started the program with, you can be damn sure that you're stronger than when you started the program. So it's the way it's set out is pretty good. But then when we start adding on an arbitrary 90%, then I could be washing out 4 months here. It's not like 5-3-1, where if I start with 90% of max, it's only really maybe 8 weeks that are a wash, because I'm going to be adding weight pretty quickly within a 4-week time frame. Now that there is a mechanism built in here that we'll talk about to try and kind of regulate that a bit better, but it's pretty inexact, and it would be very easy, very, very easy to just go with the percentages that are suggested because they're pretty good as they are, and then to reassess your working max at the end of the block. So if I do 75% for 15 reps, I could probably infer a different working max for the next block, or I could keep it the same if I want. But that would ensure the progress block to block. It would kind of like regulate it's auto regulation in itself, because I'm doing AMRAM, so it's based off performance. It's not daily auto regulation. I'm not using subjective markers like RPEs to kind of gauge what I'm doing, which for a novice or intermediate program is probably not a bad thing. And that's kind of what I would infer this to be, would be a novice or intermediate program. This to me is not an intermediate to advanced program. like the reps performed would give us objective regulation built into the program, which would be to the program's positive. It would be to his credit, not to his debt. So yeah, the whole 90% thing for me, and it's going to be the main criticism of the program, just kind of gimps it a bit. It's a bit unnecessary. It's a bit arbitrary. So not a fan of that. So if we look here, we got the volume versus the intensity of the program. So this is actually based off the percentages given. So basically what I've done here, I've basically inferred, so the first block for the rep outs, so for the 60%, I've said you're going to get 15 reps on the top set. And then on the last week, I have inferred that you're maybe going to get like 12 or 13. I can't remember exactly. On your rep out on 75%, and I've continued that trend through the whole program. So there's a bit of an anomaly here. If you track, so the red line's the average intensity, and you can see the general trend over the block is up, and the general trend for the volume is down. So that in essence is linear periodization. And I would maybe argue that if you look at most programming on a long-term basis, they're all linear. It's kind of hard to get away from having to do volume work, having to do groundwork before you do intensification. There aren't many programs that do it. Just because you do a single at 7 or a single at 8 and use it to modify your working loads, if you're doing 10s and the 5s and the 3s, that's linear. Just because you've got like auto regulation into it is a bit more sensitive, is maybe a little bit more finessed, but it's still linear. So yeah. So you can see it's a fairly standard block setup. You can see every block we're starting with higher volume. The deload week remains consistent. The intensity is trending up. The volume's trending down. All fairly standard stuff. Nothing wrong with it. Pretty solid setup. It's fine. I mean, there's nothing really to level at this. It's just more of a visual representation, so you can see the program itself. Nothing really to comment on that. It's 4 blocks, 4 mesocycles, 10s, 8s, 5s, 3s, all fine. They're kind of using like a phasic structure, having block potentiation. So basically going from the 10s to the 8s to the 5s to the 3s. The block potentiation is built into that. The strength endurance that we're performing in the first 8 weeks of the block are really going to help in the payoff for the next eight weeks, the 5s and the 3s blocks where we're working on higher percentages. If anything on this program, when you could level at it, is there's not enough work at 90% and above, or not enough work at 85% and above. The vast majority of the efforts in this program are below 85%, which is fine because we got the AMRAMs. So where there's like the progression is cooked in. For most people, you will get stronger on this program. But my kind of inference would be better lifters basically just get better at doing rep outs. And they get this kind of the same criticism I leveled at 531, where you basically get better at repping out. The skill, there's a skill to repping out that can lead to inflated 1RMs. You can actually get better at repping out 85%. You can get better at repping out 90%. 90% probably less, but certainly 75 to 85%, you can certainly get better at the skill of repping out. There's a pacing strategy to repping out. There's peripheral adaptation, fitness. You can get fitter for repping out. If repping out 85% max was a sport, there would be a training style for that. You could get better at it, but it wouldn't necessarily mean past the point that your 1 rep max goes up. A really good example of that is the 20 rep squat program, where you take your 10 rep max, walk that bitch out, and try to do 20 reps with it 3 times a week. Some people see squat gains on that program. Most people see squat gains on that program, but after a point, you're basically just training to get better at 20 rep squats. You know, there's a point of diminishing returns on that kind of program where we're just getting better at doing 20 rep squats, and we're just doing it because we're sadomasochistic. So that's another thing you could level at it. So basically, this saying for every additional rep you do above the rep max wave. So on the 10, for example, the example here, if you do 15 reps on the 10s wave, they suggest that you add 5 pounds per rep for lower body and 2.5 pounds per rep for upper body. So that would in effect mean that for the next wave, for your 8th wave, you'd add 25 pounds onto your working max for the 8s, and you'd add what's 12.5 pounds for your working max for bench press and overhead press. So there is a bit of an ad hoc mechanism in there to try and keep that trend towards a bit more rational, so that we're not doing silly rep out sets all the time. But then my whole counter argument to that would be, what's the fucking point in doing 90%? Just use your actual infer your working max, use the percentages that are there already, which are perfectly adequate. 75% as a rep out for 10s is absolutely adequate. There's no reason to be modifying that. And then if we do 13, 14 reps on that, just recalculate your 1RM and punch that into a calculator and save a whole pile of fucking about, rather than doing, okay, so I've done 15 reps, so times that by 5 pounds for this. It's just a whole pile of ad hoc complexity that just doesn't need to exist. But there is a mechanism in the program to try and make sure you trend a bit better towards your actual progression. So that's good to see, but a bit pointless, really. But my advice would be just run the program as is and just don't bother with the 90%, because there's literally no fucking point, no need. It was just back in like the late 2000s, like 2006, 2007, when Jim Wendler was coming out with 531. He was super popular. It was super popular. And this whole 90% thing, the kind of start light, which is good advice. But, if you're doing 60% for 5x10, that is starting light. That's good. It's built into the program already. Like, the program as is well put together. There's nothing wrong with that. But going 90% on 6%, it's just needless. Absolutely needless. The sentiment is totally fine. Like, starting light, good idea. But actually applying it to these programs, that kind of works a bit better for 531, because it's a bit more of a sharp increase. So basically 531 is this block, but it's over 4 weeks or 3 weeks. So you basically have your fives, your 3s, and your 1s are basically this in microcosm reran over and over again. So it's like kind of like a really truncated version of this. This is like an elongated version of it. So general comments. It's basically a more developed 531, a bit more thought put behind it. So we have like 4 blocks of training that have been put together. So 16 weeks is actually a fairly reasonable amount of time for a macro cycle. So it's a bit more thought out than 531. It kind of it meshes together a bit better than 531. So that's to the good. Constant rep outs. For like blocks here and there, good structure, like it. For what you do and you're training the whole time, not much of a fan, to be honest. Repping out brings a lot of fatigue. I know we're only suggesting that we are actually going to, like, not failure, but going to RPE 10 once in the block, which itself is pretty well put together. You could probably take or leave those rep outs on week 1 and 2 of the blocks. I don't think they're integral. You could maybe just, another way of doing it would be adding 5% to the working load and just doing 5x10, 4x10, and then doing your AMRAP. You get the same outcome pretty much. It's a bit of a gimmick, really, but they're good. And AMRAPs are good for new lifters, your beginners, your intermediates, because they encourage them to actually push themselves, which is a skill that you need to learn. So AMRAPs are something that I include in novices and intermediate programs to get them to push harder, to actually feel, you know what, I can push myself past what I think I can. A lot of the skill of strength, or strength as a skill, is actually learning how to push yourself, inhibiting things like Golgi tendons and muscle spindles, and actually being able to push past what you perceive to be your max, which is in fact not your max. A lot of it's like psychological as well. It's about how to deal with your negative self-talk, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. But AMRAPs are good to teach that, so useful from that point of view. The basic structure is sound. I don't really have much gripe with that. It's set out logically. It all flows fine. Unaltered, I think it's pretty good. The 90% for me is just a bit of a needless addition. For a cookie cutter program, you really would struggle to do much better. It's quite good. So for like beginners, probably more intermediates, this is a good program. I like this. This is probably something you could run for like 6 months, a year, pretty fruitfully. It's decent, well put together. The frequency is way too low, man. 1 time per week per lift is not enough. Maybe for deadlift, the way it's set up, it could work fine, but for squat, 1 time a week's not enough. For bench is certainly not enough. Overhead press, as a focus lift, meh. For like a general strength program, fine. For a powerlifting program, nah. Overhead press as a focus lift for powerlifting is a waste of time. It's fine. I mean, the frequencies were too low. Basically, that is what it is. Total volume's really low. The first rep or the first week, inferring that you get 15 reps of your rep out, your total working reps is 55 reps, which is super low for a week of training for any lift, especially when that's the volume phase. So low total reps, specificities, it's okay. I'm saying it's low because I'm saying it's low for powerlifting. The specificity for powerlifting is low because we're not spending a lot of time at 90% and above. We're not doing heavy 3s, 2s, heavy 1s, are limited by RPs and all the rest of it. So the specificity for a powerlifting program is low. For a novice intermediate powerlifting based program, it's pretty good. You could do worse. If you're a competitive powerlifter, as in you've done a few competitions and you're looking for a program, there's way better stuff out there. So you could do better as a powerlifter. My only real gripe with the program is that 95% inferred max. It's just pointless for me. It's a bit of a relic from the Jim Wendler days and a bit of a meme from the Jim Wendler days. The program's perfectly fine without it. Really not required. For the Jim Wendler program, it was kind of, for me, for the Jim Wendler program, and I think I spoke to this in my 531 breakdown, it just smacks of having used too heavy a percentage for the rep outs. So he had to modify it. So he basically, what I think happened with the 531 thing is he set those percentages the way he set them, ran it with a few folk, and then actually realized that, you know what, this is actually too heavy to be sustainable because it was pretty fucking heavy the way he's set out the rep outs. I think his one's like 9%. I think it's like 90% rep out or 95% for the 1, 90% for the 3, and 85% for the 5 wave. Good fucking luck starting that from the start. Okay, having done absolutely no training, we are now going to max out at 85%, 5 rep max. Oh, you got parity. Week 2, you were fatigued. Maybe you managed parity. Week 3, you're overreached. You didn't even manage to get 1 rep. Fuck, probably need to change this. 90% of your max. Okay, now the percentages make sense. So yeah, for me, it's just that whole 9% Jim Wendler thing's kind of an ad hoc to his program because the percentages were too heavy at the start, and he realized that, and then used that as a modifier rather than changing their working percentages. So it's just a bit inexact for me. The program's fine. Overall impressions, solid program. It's a really good cookie cutter program for a novice or an intermediate. We'd probably recommend that for you. For a novice, for a ranked novice lifter, it might be a little bit too complicated. So when I say that, there's just some additions like AMRAPs, RPEs, working sets, deloads, like all these concepts within programming are good and things that we probably need to be exposed to. But for a ranked novice, it's probably too much at once, because as a ranked novice, you're also trying to learn the basics of lifting, learn the ropes, as it were. So it's probably a needless complication. But if you have someone to help you, a mate or a buddy who's teaching you how to lift, 531 or not 531 Juggernaut is a good program. I like it for novices. It introduces you into block periodization, introduces you into the concept of 10s and the 8s and the 5s and the 3s. It introduces RPEs. It introduces AMRAMs. It's got quite a lot going on that's quite good for you to learn as a novice. So good in that sense. But if you're just a ranked novice looking for a program to start, this is not the program for you. Basically, because it's just too much information for you to digest, whilst also trying to learn the ropes and learn how to lift. The frequency is way too low, and the lack of skill-based variations. So, like, for some people who maybe struggle with balance at the bottom position with squat, not having the ability to do tempo squats, or not having the ability to do front squats, or not having the ability to do pause squats, make this a pretty unoptimal, shall we say, program for an intermediate or above powerlifter. So not something I would recommend for a powerlifter who was training for 2 or 3 years or a bit longer. There are way better programs out there, and we'll probably look at some of them. So that concludes this program breakdown. Hopefully you found it useful. If you've been looking at Juggernaut, hopefully it's helped you understand, or the Juggernaut method 1.0. Hopefully it's helped you understand the kind of the meat and potatoes of the program, how the progression works, some of the good things, some of the bad things. If you're a novice intermediate lifter and you like to look at this program, go for it. If you are a powerlifter or a strength athlete with maybe 2 or 3 years or more in the game, I'd probably look at something else. Okay, hope you've enjoyed it. That's going to conclude this program breakdown, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.